Seeing as how things aren't an issue for it anymore, I think I'm going to just stick with the series which I am personally interested in, and keeping that in mind, I think I'm just not going to talk about Ruby because it just hasn't managed to hook me. Uh, Also, I was planning on going over Actage, or Actage, I'm not sure how that's supposed to be pronounced, but because most of the chapters between the Jumpstart and the recent material haven't been translated yet, I'm going to hold off on reading the new stuff for now because I do think I'm really going to enjoy the series and I would rather not spoil myself. So that being said, let's get started. First off is Chainsaw Man Chapter 3. I actually had a hard time finding this because for whatever reason, all three of the first chapters are listed as being posted on November 30th. So since things are organized in the most recently added order, it took me a lot of searching to find it. So Denji is back to being head over heels for Makima since she said she liked him. But once they get to the Hunter HQ, she pairs him off with another guy who works there. Apparently, she actually doesn't care that much about having him as her dog. In fact, I'm getting the suspicion that this was more of a ploy for her to get his attention and then motivate him to work harder so that he could go up through the ranks and get back to being paired up with her again because apparently she is a very high-ranking member of this organization. So Denji's new partner, Hayakawa, immediately just takes him into an alley and beats the crap out of him. He tells him that anybody who's working in the organization for any reason that does not have strong conviction behind it, whether that be doing it for money or to get a girl, then they're going to die because they don't have the will to survive. Of course, does have quite a will to survive, given how little means he's been living on up until recently. So he says that if he's going to die sooner than he would otherwise, he doesn't care because it's the first time that he's gotten to eat good food and be treated in any way like a normal person. And so the two end up fighting. Denji ends up being the victor, in large part because he keeps taking crotch shots, and so he carries Hayakawa back to Makima, and she says that it's nice to see they're getting along. Um, and she says that Denji will be put into Hayakawa's squad full time because apparently Hayakawa's group is established for special cases. But she does take a moment to remind Denji that if he acts out, they're still going to kill him. Alone with Hayakawa again, he asks him if Makima is a bad person because she's starting to seem like that. And Hayakawa says that just because we're letting you live, that in and of itself makes us good people. And so Denji decides, okay, yeah, I can deal with that. And so then he announces that he wants to hug her again. That is still it's something that he is looking forward to being able to do some more. I remain very skeptical of Makima though. It feels like every other thing she says to Denji is just leading him on. Like when she says they still might kill him, she follows him up with saying that he's working for them until death do us part. That's obviously statement with romantic undertones. So she just seems manipulative right now. At least at the moment, I do not like her. Next up was Black Clover, and chapter 186 asks the question, how did the other Black Bulls fare while we were focusing on the ones in the Glamour world? Well, they found themselves falling because part of their castle Zord is gone, and they managed to break their fall because Gordon makes a giant poison cloud, and Gray turns it into cotton to cushion their fall. I thought that was a neat little combo spell. But everyone's tired, and especially since Henry's here, everyone's going to be losing strength very fast now that Charmy isn't there to give them the magic replenishing food. And because Yami and the other captain decide they need to go follow the higher-ups of the elves, Yami tells them, you're just going to have to surpass your limits here and now. And I think that's kind of his catchphrase at this point. So the team is facing off against the siblings Droa and Ekra. And Ekra's magic is established as eye magic, which works very well with Droa's mirror magic, because her paralyzing gaze can be reflected towards all the enemies. And Asta manages to break everyone free with his sword, and a short fight scene breaks out. Uh, I can't even remember what happened very much. It was not all that impressive from what I recall. Uh, but the Black Bulls resolve that they're going to free Gauche from his possession, even though he is very creepy and unpleasant, because he very much is creepy and unpleasant. So they say that once they've freed him, they'll try and work on getting him to improve his personality, which, that was funny. Dr. Stone 87 was next, and so everyone's getting ready for what they assume is going to be a very difficult process of making something that will allow them to fly. But all they really need is to make cloth, and then Yuzahira and Yo get to work turning hemp grass into thread. And then to speed up the process of weaving, because weaving will take a very long time when you're making something as big as a hot air balloon, Yuzahira asks for a loom from the science team. And they actually go overboard and make one that's very sophisticated, like industrial age loom, as opposed to the hand loom that she assumed she was going to have. But unfortunately, now that they've made all this cloth, Yuzahira decides that this won't be able to hold in the hot air because it breathes too easily. And Senku had actually thought that they could get by with it, but she says that they can't. And it's pretty rare for him to be wrong when it comes to playing this stuff out. So they think, well, what are we going to use this for? And Yuzahira ends up extremely enthusiastically putting together a fashion line, complete with these like little blurbs like you'd see in a magazine, which I thought was very funny. And so they decide they're going to make a little department store, and they make the prices all really high, but they give clothes away to everyone who is helping them out for free, knowing that Ryusui, as vain as he is, would buy the clothes no matter how much the price. So he spends a ton of money on it, and now they have both outfits and a huge chest of dough, a war chest as they put it. So this was a fun chapter. I enjoy the several developments that we went through, and this means we may start seeing some new outfits in the future, which should be fun, kind of break up the monotony of they're basically wearing sacks with holes in them up until now. So yeah, that'll be neat. Food Wars 292 shows us that Senzaemon and Jogichiro are actually near the competition. They're watching from a distance. And they talk briefly about how they're pretty sure that the nominees from Totsuki and Tsukasa, because he was up until recently at Totsuki, they're pretty sure that they can keep up with the noir no problem. And sure enough, Tsukasa whips out a grater that is the size of a sword, which kind of fits his knight theme, and he ends up using it like a sword to grate meat with extreme precision. Megumi also shows her unique talents. She makes an absolutely gorgeous blossom made from cuts of a roast. She decided to focus on presentation to appeal more to global diners who might not be as accustomed to Japanese presentation. So I thought that was a pretty neat idea. And we don't see what Takumi does, but he's using his Mezzaluna, which is really neat. I don't think we've seen that for a while. And we have no idea at all what Soma did. We don't see any of what he does. All we know is that he managed to pass and make it to the next round. And he actually faces off against Sarge as the first match of the next round, which is finally going back to the traditional cooking battles that we've seen through most of the series. Now, what's interesting is that even though he had to make something that she considered worthy in order to get there, the first thing she says to him is that she doesn't understand what his talent is. So this means that he made something that could be considered a specialty without doing anything out of the ordinary. Which apparently the Noir were under the impression wasn't possible, even though Soma has made specialties in the past while doing this mostly normal cooking. But still, the implication is that he does have something hidden up his sleeve, some freakish talent, as Sarge put, and so it'll be interesting to see what that is. I do think it's pretty weird that the Noir assumed the only way to make really tasty food is to do something crazy like juggling pressure cookers. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, tasty food is still tasty food. So, anyway, on to My Hero Academia 210. So, Gran Torino did call All Might to talk about the vestiges. He says that Nana saw them once, and she just told him about it one time while they were on a patrol. She says that she saw a man wrapped in fog, and he said that it wasn't time yet, and that was all she saw from him. So, presumably, based on what we know from Deku's dream, that is the original first user. And since he appeared to Deku and talked to him more, one could assume that maybe now is the time for whatever, I'm not sure. And so, on to the match that's going on. The onlookers talk about the fact that Deku's strategy of going on the attack first to draw out the enemy is very similar to Bakugo's, but it's going to be less effective because Jiro isn't there to listen for enemies. And so Deku runs into Monoma, who taunts him by pointing out that it sounded like Uraraka just yelled, and so he should go make sure his team is alright. But on the other hand, Shinso might be using his gear to make it sound like that, in which case you'd be leading me right to them if you went back to check. So Deku decides he's just not going to respond because Monoma probably copied brainwashing when the match started. Monoma tries to egg Deku on to respond by saying that Bakugo shouldn't be able to grin triumphantly since he was the one who caused All Might's retirement, but Deku just responds by silently preparing a finger flick. So Monoma about to get smashed. Meanwhile, with the others, it is confirmed that Shinso made the noise because Uraraka hears it, and so obviously it wasn't her. And meanwhile, it also turns out they're not as helpless to predict attacks as it appeared, because the twig thing that Mineta had is actually the head of a really long rope that he can string his balls on as a defensive measure. This isn't super likely that someone will run into one of the balls still, but what could happen is someone might touch the string while they try to avoid touching the balls. Because from their point of view, it would just be, oh, you just set up a bunch of balls and there's a string linking them together. But in fact, the plan in this case is that if someone touches the string, it will alert Mineta like a fishing line. And so the wire is tripped just before a bunch of nuts and bolts come flying at them, being manipulated by Yanagi's poltergeist quirk, which allows her to move small objects whose weight in total cannot be more than that of a human. And so Mina puts up an acid shield to stop them, but then they suddenly expand because Kodai used her size quirk on them, which allows her to shrink or presumably grow things. And so she shrunk things so that Yanagi could manipulate them and then grew them once they got into their target. And so Uraraka touches all of them really quickly so that they float, so that their momentum stops, because apparently when you remove gravity from something, all of its momentum stops. I think her quirk is probably a little different than just removing gravity. It seems like it does more than that. But then suddenly the debris starts moving again because Shota, who is the final member on Class B's side this time around, is finally revealing what his twin impact quirk does. So anything he hits will, later on, he can use his quirk to cause those things that he hit to gain a burst of momentum, to be basically struck with a greater force than he hit them with. And he has the scouter on that he wears, which displays things kind of like a radar, so that he can see presumably where the enemies are and where the objects are, so that he knows when the right time to use his quirk is. So they absolutely planned everything out. So if Uraraka were to stop them, then he could start them moving again. That was really cool. Incidentally, we also learned that Kodai cannot affect the size of living things, so she can't go Mount Lady, for example, or Ant-Man, or either of those. But the chapter ends with what may very well end up stopping the match, because when Deku's about to do his finger flick, it causes all this black energy to just burst out from his arm. It destroys his gauntlet, and I would assume that since it's emitting such force that the gauntlet was destroyed, that his arm might be broken again. I'm not sure what's going on, if the first user is trying to do something, or maybe All For One is exerting some kind of control over the quirk, since it's been established in the last chapter that he is somehow linked to it, at least now that his brother's being active. But I'm not sure. What I'm more concerned about at the moment is that if Deku's arm just broke, then that could permanently impair them. Because, well, he only broke one arm, so it could permanently impair that arm. Because remember, he can only break them like once or twice more before they will be completely unusable. So the energy stuff erupting everywhere is obviously bad in and of itself, but it could have some dangerous repercussions for Deku in the future, even after this gets sorted out. So that's going to be very interesting to find out what's happening. In the Promised Neverland 116, a smaller group of the kids heads to the nearby mass production farm to get some medicine. Emma says that Hayato should take her there while Jin stays behind, so that if they aren't back by sundown, then she wants Jin to lead everyone else to Minerva. But they also decide that another one of the kids named Anna will go as well, because apparently she's the best with medicine. What's interesting is that when she's picked, Ray seems shocked, and the others seem to notice that he's very uneased, so they suggest that he goes well, so it's a group of 4. And Hayato says that don't worry, this will go well, because even for a mass production farm, this is a low-grade place. There are only a few demons, most of it is just machines, so all we really have to worry about is cameras, and maybe mechanical centers like, like infrared lasers maybe. Or he mentions that there are also sound alerts. Kids enter through the sewers, and we actually see some bored demons watching security cameras, which seems to support the idea that, yeah, this is all they have as a security system. But one of them mentions that it sucks that they've had to increase patrols recently because of the raids on the other farms. So just then the kids are discovered, and Ray kills the demon that found them. But now the security people know that they're there, and so Hayato and Ray decide that they're going to take out any demons that might come their way, while Emma and Anna go to find the medicine. Now, I actually have some thoughts on Anna, because as the kids were entering through the sewers, there's this brief moment when Anna slips and Ray is right there to catch her, and then there's also a scene where they're climbing down a ladder, I think it was, and Emma helps her down from the ladder too. And so combine that with Ray's shocked reaction earlier, and the fact that from just like almost right away when they're running away from the area where the demon spotted them, Anna seems to be short of breath. I think that she may be particularly frail, so I hope nothing happens to her. Knowing this series, it's entirely possible that something might. We Never Learn Chapter 92 starts with the clarification that no, Rizu really did expect Nariyuki to be asleep still, but she insists that he has nothing to apologize for since, she really could have changed anywhere else, so good for her. And so while her intentions weren't what I suspected they were, she was only taking her clothes off because she got sweaty after carrying him up the stairs, she is still intent on pampering him in a very romantic fashion. Like, she rests his head in her lap, and she hand feeds him and all this stuff. She does admit that she's just trying to do what she would do for a pet rabbit, because that's, I guess, all she has experience with. But still, the fact remains she's doing everything she can to try and make up to him for everything that he's done, which, in the end, is very sweet. And so, eventually, Nariyuki admits the thing that had been weighing on his mind, the thing that he's been thinking of doing but he thinks would be selfish, is he's considering abandoning the VIP recommendation. Now, he quickly regrets saying it, and he tries to take it back, but Rizu tells him that, hey, if he's found something else that he wants to do more, then she'll support him, and he should feel free to pursue his dreams, because he's been helping all the girls pursue their dreams. So, this was overall there are a lot of suggestive moments in the chapter. I didn't even touch on when Rizu accidentally hypnotized herself into wanting Naruyuki to do the same things to her. The bombshell near the end of him considering dropping the scholarship, it ultimately stole the show. I do think it's really cool that the story seems to be leading up to all of the things Naruyuki has done for the others, resulting in them being able to support him to do what he wants. It's heartwarming to see that he has a support network like this, and it's very much something that he has earned the right to take advantage of, because he works himself to the bone for these people. So, yeah, it's interesting that, though, that the series started, the reason he met all of these people is because he was trying to earn the scholarship. And in the end, the fact that he's been helping them out may end up helping him to do something completely different than getting a free ride to college. So, yeah. Next up was Hell's Paradise, Chapter 41. And so the flowers sprouting on Senta have stopped. They managed to cut all of them off. But there's no telling if he's going to survive. Meanwhile, Shion, or Cheyenne, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, is taking on the Tensen in this epic battle. He keeps inflicting lasting damage, so he can clearly do the same thing that Sagiri could. But unfortunately, even if he gets a tiny scratch from the Tensen in this state, it will cause flowers to start growing in him. And then he has to cut them out, and that will damage his body even more. So he can't keep this up for too long. He can potentially win the fight, but he doesn't have the stamina to do it all on his own. Luckily, the girl he took on as an apprentice, I forget what her name was, her Tao, I guess, expresses as restorative properties. She can bring strength back to people. Apparently, this was something she did for her grandpa when she was really little. She'd give him a hug, and he'd say, "Oh, I feel so much better," which you would think that might have just been him trying to make her feel like she was helping him out. But no, actually, she can bring energy back to people, and Sagiri and Yuzuriha end up having some strength left in him. So now Shion has backup, although Yuzuriha says that she hasn't regained very much strength, so she's going to sit the fight out. But still, he has his apprentice and Sagiri to assist him in trying to take down the Tensen. Yeah, interesting to see yet another new application of Tao. It'll be interesting to see how many types of abilities we'll end up seeing by the time the series is over. So Neolation Chapter 2 is the next one, and it reveals right off the bat that once the police realized they got the wrong guys, they released them with no charge, since the whole forgery thing was never brought to their attention. So, yeah, Arata didn't end up doing much aside from humiliating them. But while they were in the slammer, he dug up more dirt on them, and apparently he got enough to threaten them into letting him take their office. So, actually, I guess their threat is nullified. And so, at one point, Daigo leaves to buy cleaning supplies so they can sweep up the place, and he ends up being taken hostage by the loan sharks' allies. Apparently, they are a subsidiary of a Yakuza group. And so the Yakuza group calls Arata, demanding that he turn over the documents he has on them, which are, I guess, the leverage that he had, in exchange for returning his partner. But the Hacker Master Neo proves that they are not in a position to be making bargains with him, because he managed to figure out their withheld number in a matter of seconds, just by accessing the phone company and looking at the most recent calls. So, unfortunately, though, the Yakuza were using a burner phone that they stole from a random bum, I guess. And so, the leader threatens Daigo that unless Neo brings all the dead documents to exchange for him, they're going to bury him in cement. But Arata didn't need to meet them on their terms, because even though the burner phone didn't have GPS, he was able to figure out its location anyway based on the cell towers the calls went through. They talked multiple times over the phone, the first time when they called him, and the second time when he called them back, to taunt them that, hey, I'm in control here. And a third time when I actually forget what words were exchanged there. Um, but, no, actually, uh, the last time that he called them, he was explaining to them exactly how he was going to ruin them, because their printer suddenly starts overheating and printing papers that are on fire. And so flaming papers get spit all over the place, because obviously he hacked into the printer and overheated it. And the boss man says that, hey, even if this place gets burned down, it doesn't matter. We're big enough that we can get by even then. But as it turns out, starting a fire was just step one of the plan, because Arata also called the fire department shortly before he overheated the printer, because he knew the fire was going to happen. So when they arrive to put out the fire, they see Daigo tied up, and they realize it seems very suspicious that there was someone tied up in a place that was starting to catch fire. So they arrest the whole group. And so in the end, Arata used their entire plan against them, and the chapter ends as he says that, yeah, this was all just child's play. So, yeah, do not mess with Arata. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see the kind of things he can do with hacking. So far, it's mostly just been causing fires, but yeah, presumably there'll be more varied things as this time goes on. And so I'm done with the chapters that were posted at the beginning of the week, but I have a couple chapters from December 20th that I also want to talk about before the next chunk comes out on December 21st. So Dragon Ball Super Chapter 43 is now beyond where the anime is, because the anime stopped through the Broly movie. I'm actually kind of interested in this plot about retrieving the Grand Supreme Kai. So it's explained that 10 million years ago, the Grand Supreme Kai and the South Supreme Kai, who are the two strongest of the bunch, were fighting against a being named Plant Eater Goro. He is not a Galactus-sized person. Instead, he destroys plants and just absorbs the energy from them, kind of like a spirit bomb that doesn't leave anything behind, I suppose. And, well, obviously also, instead of putting his arms in the air, he just eats the energy and he gets stronger. And so the Grand Supreme Kai realizes that if he keeps getting stronger, soon even all of them working together might not be able to stop him. So he uses a lot of his strength to seal away his magic using a technique which he created called the Kai Kai Matoru. And so the Galactic Police, which were the predecessors to the Galactic Patrol, arrest him, put him in jail, sentence him to death because even without his magic, he's still very tough. But because he's still very tough, nobody is capable of killing him. So he's sat in jail for 10 million years, and now he's managed to escape, having regained his magic over time. And so now the Galactic Patrol thinks that they will need the Grand Supreme Kai again in order to stop him. I have to wonder why they don't just call in Beerus, but I don't know, maybe. Beerus in general seems to be pretty lazy about most matters, so they decided to go to the Grand Supreme Kai because he's been more active. He fought Boo, he fought this Goro guy. Beerus just throws tantrums. So unfortunately, Boo is passed out, so they can't wake him right now. But Goku says that he and Vegeta should be able to catch the guy. They're strong. They're very strong. Although Goku notes that they aren't the strongest people that they've met, because recently they met this one Saiyan, hint hint, watch the Broly movie, coming out in December. But Vegeta wonders about how strong the elite patrolman Maris is, or Maris, because even though he couldn't read his ki, Maris managed to get the drop on them. He managed to get behind them and shoot them with a stun gun. And they're obviously very fast. They can detect things very fast. So Maris, at the very least, is very, very fast. So Goku and Vegeta are inducted to the patrol temporarily so that they can work with them to catch Goro. We actually learn, I thought this was a neat little tidbit, that Vegeta is Vegeta the Fourth. And so Maris leaves on a mission, and the Saiyans decide they want to follow him and see what he's made of. And that prompts Jocko to go with them also, because he has to keep an eye on them, because Earth is within his jurisdiction. So the crooks that Mirus was called to take down are trying to steal a valuable power source called Blue Aurum. And Jocko says, oh, it's like Skygold on Earth. I think that Skygold was probably a plot point in the Jocko manga, but it's been a number of years since that ran. Obviously, it was before Dragon Ball Super was a thing, so a while ago. And so the crooks have pretty generic abilities. One can paralyze people, one can stretch your arms. But the leader is unique. He can touch things, it seems, and turn them into bombs. Kind of like Killer Queen, I guess. So when Mirus holds him up, then he puts his hands up, but as he drops his gun, he infuses it with some of his energy, I'm assuming, and has it explode to separate the train car that he was standing on, because this is happening on a train that was transporting the Blue Aurum. He separates that car from the car that Mirus was on, and so it seems like he and his people are going to get a clean getaway, because the gun also destroyed the track, so it seems like they're going to fall down. But Mirus manages to catch the train, so even though he's nowhere near Saiyan power level, presumably, at this point, even a relatively weak person can hold up an entire train. It's not that hard at this point in Dragon Ball. And he also manages to, after doing that, tamper with the villain's spaceship so fast that the Saiyans do not see him do it. They just see him catch the train, and then the spaceship suddenly is no longer able to fly. So, back at HQ, Goku and Vegeta are very impressed, and but the patrol has gotten a lock on Goro's location, and so Goku says, "Oh, so which direction is he in?" And so they point him there, and so he uses his instant transmission key sensing ability to see if he can get an exact lock on him, and so he senses him, but as the chapter ends, he turns around to look back at Goku. Actually, at this point in my notes, I have him as Moro. I'm not sure whether I misspelled it when I called him Goro or when I called him Moro, but anyway, kind of creepy. This is kind of a Dio when Joseph uses the Hermit Purple thing, I guess. I make a lot of JoJo comparisons in this series, I just noticed. But, so while the guy is presumably stronger than Boo, because he was able to take on both the South Supreme Kai and the Grand Supreme Kai at once, logically, I feel like he shouldn't be a threat to the Saiyans yet. But if he starts using his magic to eat a bunch of planets, though I'm not sure how many planets there would be for him to eat, since I remember there weren't a whole lot of planets with sustainable life on them right now. Or at least not with people very strong. I forget what the exact count was back in the Term of the Power arc. But, at any rate, he should be able to grow stronger, so they just need to take him down before he can do that. I'm interested to see where this arc is going, because I had been thinking that the whole multiple Supreme Kais thing was just getting swept under the rug, since we've only seen one from each other universe. So, my assumption about that had been that, oh, I guess Shin is just the Grand Supreme Kai now, since he's the only Supreme Kai left that's just him by default. And the ones we see from the other universes are also the Grand Supreme Kai from those universes. But, yeah. So, interested to see where this is going. So, Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V Chapter 41 was also updated on the day I'm recording this. And so, Raiji uses the power of his DD dog to seal Clearing Fast Dragon's attack and its effect, because it can do that to any monster that was summoned from the extra deck. And so Yu responds by summoning a token and then fusing it with his Fast Dragon to summon Starving Venemy Dragon. And he looks ecstatic when he does this. Like, using his brother's monsters makes him happy, which makes sense, because they're all the guys left with him. But it does, I suppose, feel like they're fighting with him. Reiji manages to bring out another DD dog to trap that monster. But the fusion card he used, Surprise Fusion, allows him to swap the fusion monster out for tokens, which he uses to Xyz summon Dark Anthalion Dragon. But Raiju brings out a third DD dog, which he does using the same card as he did during the second one. So that seals that one also. But at least you can't have more than 3, because you can't have more than 3 copies of a card in the deck. So Yuya Pendulum summons the previous 2 monsters, because as a reminder, Pendulum summoning is really broken. But Raiji has one last card that seals them too. Yuya isn't worried though, because he can tribute all 3 monsters in order to summon God Eye's Phantom Dragon. So, ace card on basically his first turn. Or maybe it's his second turn. I'm pretty sure it's his first turn. And so, Raiji has one last trap card though, which basically takes the form of a negate attack. But it has the added effect of turning Reiji's DD monsters into Go DD monsters. So now he's kind of got the God thing going for him. G-O-D-D. And so everyone else in the area arrives to watch, and one of them notes that, oh hey, everyone whose destiny was toyed with by God is here now. What a coincidence. And so Reiji starts the next turn by getting the next action card. Again with his scarf, he turns it into wings. So I don't know what this thing can't do. I'm really starting to wonder if, in part, this is reality warping due to the space that they're fighting in. But he pendulum summons his ace monster, which most certainly was created for him almost immediately recently by his Atom Factor, because it is called Divine Go DDD Zero King Zero God Reiji. One of those real mouthful of a name cards, and also very self-centered at that. So yeah, obviously he just got this card a moment ago. And I have to wonder what it's going to do. And yeah, so the clash of the new God cards is about to occur. And so that's all of the chunk of these chapters this week. That's all of them talked about, which is good, because just tomorrow I've got another week's worth of chapters to read. So I hope that you've all enjoyed my rambling, and if you did, then feel free to leave a like and consider coming back next time to hear me ramble some more.